I grew up loving wildlife, and then as I went through grad school, I really realized that for wildlife to still be around later, it was going to depend on people. Both Westerners, but even more so the local people that are living with wildlife and incurring the costs that are associated with that. And I felt that in Tanzania, and especially in Serengeti National Park, the emphasis for so long has been on wildlife. Wildlife, wildlife, wildlife. And this is the part of the world where you get those world-class $1,000 safaris where you get the beautiful pictures of lions and zebras and elephants, always neglecting this other component of the picture, which is the people that are suffering due to all this wildlife that they're living with. Protected areas in East Africa are like islands surrounded by seas of humanity. And these islands are getting more and more encroached by people with every passing year. The wildlife is drawing people and money into the country, so it's benefiting people. But the question is, are those benefits really getting down to the local people? And I began to see that there's got to be a balance here between how local people are faring and how the wildlife there is thriving. It didn't take me long in the field, living amidst people, to realize that, wow, the local people living next to Serengeti National Park are suffering inordinately from wildlife and from other things I was soon to discover. For instance, I sat down with one family and was talking to this mother of several children and realized that she'd had a 3-year-old son taken away by a hyena. Her son was playing outside, the hyena came and grabbed him and dragged him away. I began to realize also other things that I rarely read in the papers or saw in the literature, is that crop destruction due to wildlife is absolutely out of this world. The whole system in Serengeti National Park is based largely in part on the wildebeest migration that travels around the park. Some of them are resident, some of them go up into southern Kenya for a bit, but they're largely going in this rough circle around the protected area. This is dictated oftentimes by slight fluctuations in rainfall, which are what these wildebeest are following. Poor farmers living on the edge of these protected areas would lose their whole year's possible earnings devastated in one night. It's not everybody, it's some of them. But the question is, what do you do about such losses? And how can you somehow get benefits to these people and encourage them to protect this resource when they're suffering such loss? A lot of the villages that are getting the most benefits from living near a park are not necessarily suffering the most from park-related effects, such as crop destruction from wildlife and wildlife depredation on livestock. At the same time, those that are suffering the most are going without benefits in a lot of cases altogether. So the question is, how can we get these two in line, where the villages that are suffering the most are getting a disproportionately higher amount of the benefits? 3 villages emerged that really depict these findings. Banchugu village, for instance, was located right on the boundary between 2 reserves, the Serengeti National Park and the Ikoma Game Reserve. Banchugu village, the people in that village and the village as a whole suffered incredible amounts of livestock losses and agricultural damage because of the park. At the same time, the village recorded a very minimal level of tourism-related income from the park. The only really sources of revenue from Banchugu village, or from households in that village, were from illegal activities such as poaching, wildlife within a protected area border, but those illegal benefits by far didn't outweigh the cost that village suffered. Another village that is kind of the control of the whole study was Rungabure village, which was located roughly 18 kilometers from the nearest protected area boundary. The village extracted a good amount of revenue from protected areas via employment and even some income from illegal activities such as poaching. But really, 18 kilometers was too far to suffer from crop destruction from wildlife and wildlife depredation on livestock. The one village that really demarcated potentially the best relationship with a protected area was Robanda village. And in Robanda village, they devised their income generating system is based almost entirely on tourism. They've decided as corporately as a village and individually as households that we live right next to a protected area. We're not going to plant a whole lot of crops or keep a lot of livestock because we know that they're going to be taken and we're going to accrue losses because of it. The costs are just too much. As a result, instead of just sitting on their hands, this village has collectively started up a lot of village-level wildlife tourism enterprises via the guest houses for people, cheaper rate accommodations for people who want to visit the park to stay outside and not pay the exorbitant fees of staying inside the park. It's kind of the optimal arrangement. Not that any village is perfect, but this village seems like it's the closest to achieving that balance between protecting and conserving wildlife and helping livelihoods of people living within the village.